Returning home from college for the summer was supposed to be comforting, but it didn't turn out that way. I felt adrift, realizing my once close group of friends had scattered. Some had simply drifted apart, while others had gone their separate ways violently, just as my dad had warned might happen. Loneliness gnawed at me until one evening, an unexpected lifeline appeared. "Want to go smoke some joints and drink Cayman Jacks with me?" texted Kay, a friend who had become an unexpected confidant despite our infrequent interactions. "Absolutely. I know the perfect spot," I replied eagerly. Kay and I had a unique bond. Our friendship began when she revealed some harsh truths about my ex. Since then, we'd had an unspoken agreement to support each other when needed, a purely platonic connection built on trust. That night, around midnight, Kay drove to my place. We took a short drive to the trailhead, excitement buzzing between us as we armed ourselves with only our phone flashlights. The trail began alongside a vast, fog-covered field, its wet grass glistening eerily under the moonlight. To our right, a dense forest loomed, dark and menacing. Even before we lit our first joint, paranoia began creeping in. Suddenly, I remembered something I had conveniently forgotten to mention before we set out. "There's an abandoned cabin up ahead," I murmured. "Shut up, really?" Kay asked, her unease evident. The cabin emerged from the darkness like a relic from a forgotten past. Its skeletal remains barely held together, crumbling stone walls and fragments of what had once been a floor. The air was thick with a musty scent, a testament to the ravages of time. A dried-up stream bed snaked through the site, once a source of life, now just another reminder of decay. Moss clung to the wood, a patchwork quilt of green overtaking what remained. "What do you think happened here?" Kay asked, her voice laced with curiosity and trepidation. "How would I know?" I replied, running my hand along the cool, rough stones. "It's pretty fucking cool, though." "Do you think it's haunted?" She chuckled nervously. I peered into the shadows cast by the ruins. "I don't know about haunted, but it's definitely unsettling. And it is literally 1 in the morning." We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the place pressing down on us. It felt like the forest itself was holding its breath. After soaking in the eerie atmosphere, we continued up a steep incline. My flashlight caught a massive spider web, glistening with dew, with an enormous spider perched menacingly at its center. We both screamed, stumbling back as we scrambled to find a way around it. Finally, we reached a clearing, the last stretch before the hilltop. Trying to shake off the tension, I joked, "Why are we doing this? We haven't even smoked yet." Kay let out a reluctant laugh. At the top, we set up our chairs and lit our joints. The initial relief soon gave way to creeping paranoia. The chirping birds behind us, once soothing, now sounded hollow and distorted, as if some unseen force had twisted nature into a grotesque parody of itself. "I don't feel right," I admitted, my voice unsteady. Kay nodded, her wide eyes reflecting my unease. "Do you think it's just the weed? Or is there really something wrong?" "I don't know," I whispered, glancing down at the darkened field below. "But I can't shake the feeling that we're not alone." Then, I saw them. As a child, I had a recurring nightmare. I was alone in a car, staring into a dark field. From the shadows, 2 glowing eyes would emerge, watching me with silent, malevolent intent. And now, those very eyes were there. They hovered in the prairie below us, about 150 feet away, faint but unmistakable. A primal fear surged through me, deeper than anything I had ever felt. The realization that my childhood nightmare had somehow bled into reality sent a wave of panic through my body. Urgently, I turned to Kay. "We need to leave." She hadn't seen them, I didn't explain. I couldn't. We hurried down the trail, the tension thick enough to choke on. In the distance, dogs began barking, a harsh, discordant sound that only heightened our fear. By the time we reached Kay's car, my heart was pounding. Instead of heading home, we drove to a nearby cemetery to finish smoking. I never mentioned the eyes. It was too bizarre, too unreal to put into words. To this day, I haven't returned to that hill. Whatever I saw that night, real or imagined, it left a fear in me that hasn't faded. This might sound far-fetched, but every word is true. I even have photos from that night. Has anyone else ever experienced something like this? If my storytelling isn't the best, I apologize. This is my first attempt at writing something like this, and I'm not known for having the best memory. Feel free to ask for any clarifications. As the title states, my husband and I stayed up late the other night, binge watching a show. When we finally decided to head to bed, I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, turned on the fan, and laid down while he went to the kitchen to fill his water bottle. The second my head hit the pillow, I heard it. A scream. Not just any scream. Something out of a horror movie. Demonic. Inhuman. For a moment, I was completely frozen in fear. Then I grabbed my phone and texted my husband. "Did you hear that?" At that very moment, he texted me the exact same thing. Without hesitation, he bolted into the living room to check on our 2-year-old daughter, who had been sleeping on the couch. She was still passed out, mouth open, snoring, completely undisturbed. So, we knew it wasn't her. Not that she could have made a noise like that to begin with. But the sound had come from the living room. I feel a little insane even trying to explain it. It was the kind of thing that only happens in horror movies. Except this was real. We live in the city, and that night, it was minus 35 degrees Celsius outside, so all our windows were shut tight. There was no way the sound had come from outside. We ruled out animals. No foxes, no logical explanation. Our house is 114 years old, sitting right across the back alley from a funeral home, which ironically was a selling point for us. When we first moved in, neighbors mentioned that the house was haunted. But in the 2 years we've lived here, we've never experienced anything this terrifying. Sure, we've seen the occasional shadow figure in our peripherals. Strange noises could be chalked up to the cats. I've had more frequent sleep paralysis, but nothing that convinced me our home was truly haunted. Until now. It hasn't happened since, but we're both extremely confused and slightly terrified. The next morning, I heavily smudged the entire house, opening every window to let out any stagnant energy. But I can't shake the feeling that something was here. Does anyone have any idea what this could have been, if not a terrifying paranormal event? I'm an 18-year-old female, and I'm not sure if what happened to me the other night was truly scary, or if I was just tripping out. But here it goes. I was doing my usual night stimming, something I do as an autistic person to help me relax. For me, that usually means pacing back and forth at night, standing in the dark hallway, and talking to myself. Sometimes with the light on, depending on my mood. I was just doing my thing, enjoying myself, when I took a break and stopped pacing. I stood in front of my parents' door for a bit. At one point I had gone into their bathroom, but I came back out, shut the door, and continued doing my thing. Then, everything changed. For some reason, I had my eyes closed. And like any normal person who wasn't asleep, I eventually just opened them. and that's when I saw someone standing there, right in front of me. It was a dark silhouette of a woman, or at least a person. I couldn't see her face, but I was completely taken aback. And honestly, a little terrified. My brain tried to process what I was seeing, and my first reaction was to scream and cover my eyes. I immediately called out to my mom. She didn't respond right away, which made me even more scared. Those few moments felt like forever. But finally she answered, asking if I was okay. My older sister called out too, checking on me. When I told them what happened, they both gave me a hug and reassured me. Not long after, my mom invited me to watch a cartoon with her, and my sister asked if I wanted to come back to our room. I told her no, and went to watch TV with my mom instead. She asked me what I saw, and I told her I thought it was a woman. Her response? She thought it might have been because we had been watching Dirty Pop, the boy band scam, a docuseries about Lou Pearlman and the awful things he did to the boy bands he managed. She said the creepy music and unsettling imagery might have triggered what I saw. I'm not entirely sure that's the case, though. She also complained about how much they showed in the series instead of just explaining it. But honestly, we were watching it for that reason, to understand what went down. On a lighter note, my mom and I ended up watching Kipper on Prime Video. Then she asked if I wanted to sleep in her room since my dad works overnight a lot, and she's been feeling lonely. I said yes, and it was actually kind of nice. To wrap this up, I still don't know what caused this experience. Maybe it was the Netflix docuseries. Maybe it was just my imagination. Or maybe it was all the scary YouTube videos I watch, like Horror Shorts Party. Or maybe, just maybe, it was my deceased grandmother, who passed away in 2019 when she was still a younger adult. That's the theory I keep coming back to. But honestly, I have no idea. So, what do you guys think? Was it all in my head? Or was it something more? Feel free to comment with your thoughts, or share your own scary experiences. I'm 47 now, but when I was a young girl, I lived out in Southside, past the Palms, in Gympie, Queensland. My bed was right next to a large window that overlooked a grassy paddock, sloping down toward a dam at the bottom of the hill. We were always told never to go near that dam. Not that we wanted to. Unlike the ones at my friends' houses where we'd swim, this water was a putrid black, murky, and uninviting. Besides, we had a pool, so there was never any reason to go near it. But what I remember most from those years was the man by the water's edge. Every night, I swore I could see a silhouette standing by the dam. It was always too dark to make out any features, but his presence was unmistakable. I don't even know what compelled me to look out the window so often, but something always drew my eyes to that spot. I would cry out to my parents, terrified, but they dismissed it as nothing more than a young girl's imagination. They'd scold me for opening the curtains and send me back to bed. For a long time, I questioned whether I had truly seen him. But then, one night changed everything. It had been raining for days. The heavy downpour made me feel a little safer. I couldn't see as far down the paddock through the curtain of rain. But still, I stared out my window, just like always. And then, in a flash of lightning, I saw him. Only this time, he wasn't by the dam. He was closer, halfway up the hill, standing at the boundary of our house yard. I was paralyzed with fear before I finally let out a blood-curdling scream. My parents rushed in, trying to calm me down, assuring me there was nothing outside. But just as they turned toward the window, another flash of lightning lit up the sky. And there he was, standing beneath the palms, right outside my window, looking straight at us. My mother clutched me in terror, frantically telling my father to call the police. But instead, He grabbed his rifle, switched on the spotlights, and scanned the yard. He fired a few warning shots into the night, while my mother and I huddled between the bed and the wall, wrapped in blankets, trembling. But my father never saw anyone. That night, my parents finally believed something, or someone was out there. But they refused to accept that I had been seeing this figure every night for years. We moved a couple of years later, but in the meantime, my parents planted thick bushes outside my window to block my view and, I suspect, to keep anyone from looking in. But sometimes, through a small gap in the curtains, I would peek outside, and through the slowly growing shrubs, I could still see him, standing in the shadows, watching. I haven't seen anything like that since, and I pray I never do again. It haunted me back then, and I still suffer from terrible sleep problems because of it. If I ever saw something like that today, I think it might just stop my heart for good.